Hello and welcome to another Mobalytics video. I'm your host Virkayu, and in this one we are going to be having a look at the 3 new assassin junglers that are capturing everyone's imagination, as I'm sure you're seeing on the streams tracking the pros, or unfortunately in your ranked games. That's right, Kiana, Zed, and Talon have all received specific jungle buffs and now exist in the realm of viability for those of you who just want more assassins in the jungle in order to carry, win, and climb. We will go over their strengths, weaknesses, runes, max orders, item builds, and everything you need to get started on carrying with these champions. For a fully in-depth gameplay example of showing these champions and how they work in the wild in a full game, I will link below my personal channel, the Virkayu gameplay channel, that will have those ready for you. And if you do want to keep track of how their itemization and builds change over the course of the patches, consider downloading the Mobalytics companion, which will give you that information as it comes out. And now without hesitation, let's begin. And because we all like learning to swim in the deep end, at least that's apparently how people like to climb, picking the most difficult champions, we shall begin with Kiana. She has always been a very high-risk, high-reward playstyle champion who is pretty hard to get the hang of overall. Successful high-elo Kiana mains are pretty rare for most of the servers we play on, but if you go to China and you have a look at the Super server and the Ionia server, you will see quite a fair amount, especially in the mid lane. But now junglers are returning to the fray as well. Those who had committed some time into this champion can really destroy their opponents no matter what the balance state. Looked like she had a 44% win rate, doesn't matter to them. Her kit offers a pretty juicy kick overall. She brings burst, mobility, huge AoE CC in her ultimate, and when she gets ahead she can simply delete Soraka's before they even realize that you're near them. It also works on ADCs, but I do recommend taking care of that Soraka pretty quickly. The reason why people are finding so much success in the jungle with her is simply due to the nature of the champion's design. If you remember Season 9, she was a very viable jungler as well, but really focused on a two-way flex pick and pro play, so Riot decided, listen, it's a little too strong in both roles, we're going to focus on the mid lane. However, even with the jungle buffs that she just received, the original reason why she was so good in the jungle is just because of her elements in her kit, the versatility, allowing her to get into fights, stun people, be invisible, one-shot someone, and get out. This is absolutely perfect when it comes to ganks and fights in the river, where she can abuse her WQ options. Kiana's ganks pre-6 offer a somewhat decent damage, but mainly the attraction to her is due to the root. CC and a stun will always go better with damage rather than pure damage. It can work, but CC is always rule 1, make sure you're stacking that properly. Pick up your water element Q from the river and then walk into a lane and root them. It's that simple. This works even better with your E, as using it together with your Q in combination makes it nearly impossible to miss. Whereas before this was completely undodgeable, there is a small window for enemies to react. Combining this short piece of instant CC with your burst damage as well as chase potential, your ganks are simply giga effective. After you've got your ultimate though, you become immensely more impactful. Your ultimate has the potential to lock up and deal huge amounts of burst damage to entire teams, or if you're an ARAM enjoyer, an entire wall. This is of course ideal for ganking or teamfighting over early objectives because you very often push teams into choke points where of course there's usually a wall, and that's usually of course where they will die. One thing about Kiana that is hard though is that she's a very all or nothing champion, feast or famine. If enemies survive your initial burst due to you not dealing quite enough damage because you're behind, or you misjudge your spells and your output, or you simply misplay it, like most assassins, once you go in and you have that situation, you're most likely going to end up dead and most likely just a little bit upset. Kiana does take some practice, a lot of practice, but if you can get the hang of her combos and playstyle, the assassin playstyle, which is what this entire video is about, you can really destroy the map with her. Right, skill order, runes, and itemization. First things first, on jungle Kiana, you're going to want to start Q, W, E, and then max your Q followed by W and then E to finish. The best option for runes is Electrocute. It gives you another element, pun not intended, in which to burst any squishy into another realm. After that, you can fill out the rest of the domination tree for maximum damage and sustain, and then similarly in the precision tree you go for presence of mind and last stand. Because last stand, gold drinker, you're an assassin, right? Of course we're gonna build bruise itemization. That's completely normal. But that is still not the best choice for the jungle. Here you can go Prowler's Claw as a basically primary option, along with the alternative of perhaps going into the Eclipse. The Prowlers though, it gives you another gap closer, which is always good for jungles, alongside a ton of useful stats to boost your damage significantly. Damage amp plus electrocute plus a gap closer, juicy. Following this, we want to go Yumu's Ghostblade, which is the go-to of choice since they reverted it into a more primordial state where it's just really strong. People are building it before even finishing their mythic. You get an early Durg, you rush a Ghostblade on Talon, Zed, Kiana, any assassin really. It gives you the ability to chase down kills for people who have not accepted their fate, and also allows simply for great picks when people miss position. We do want to go Ionian Boots of Lucidity for our boots, as most junglers have been going for the whole year, because the amount of haste that equates to around 18% CDR for such a cheap cost early in the game is just nuts for your first clears and your skirmishing. Cerilda's Grudge gives you a big boost to your damage and also adds a slow in case you needed some more things to your kit, which is huge when it comes to sticking to enemies and taking them out. Edge of Night is basically your defensive option, granting you a spell shield against such things like Morgana Qs or anything that might give you some kind of stress. Black Cleaver is a really great item if you perhaps have a full AD team comp, maybe some tankier opponents who are building armor stacking. It gives you a bit of shred as well as some stickability. Situationally, obviously Guardian Angel if you're getting blown up and you wish to survive for a little bit longer, Serpent's Fang if someone has shields and people have a lot of shields a lot of the time, and finally Campang Chainsword if there's a lot of healing against you and someone forgot to ban Soraka. Next up, we are going to talk about Talon, who is the more accessible choice with the best win rate out of the three. He's easier to use. His E allows him to basically get across a whole map uncontested. I mean, we used to all love the Rek'Sai tunnels and basically think, oh, look at the cool angles we can gank with. Except Talon can do it with basically no cooldown, no cost, and yeah, it's just a little bit frustrating. Not only that, but his clears have now been really buffed and steroided compared to what they used to be. On my main channel, I have done a Talon jungle video recently, and it's really obscene how fast he can clear and get around the map with the amount of damage that his kit design possesses. So much damage, he's got a slow, he's got bleed damage, he's got more than enough damage to land some effective ganks and kills no matter what, even without CC. And where he lacks that CC, he makes up for it as we discussed with the flanking from his E, and then he has stealth from the ultimate. When it comes to ganking his Talon early game, while you do want to focus very heavily on your farming and getting level 6, optimizing your experience, you do have some very good tools in the kit to inflict some pain on enemy laners. In addition to using that E for a variety of ganking angles, no matter what the vision control might be for the enemy team, I mean, there's really no reason to simply walk into a lane like a normal jungler, then you're not using the Talon correctly. It's all about the element of surprise with this jungler, removing enemies' ability to feel safe inside their warded areas, much like an Evelynn might do post 6. You can see Talon topside, but if you don't know where he's going next and he's just eating across the map through the fog of war and basically flanking behind you, or is he? And that's a nightmare you want to play with by planting a worm inside the enemy's head that consistently says Talon is right there. Aside from this pure element of surprise and mental warfare that you're inflicting, your Q is a gap closer and your W slows, as I already mentioned, only on the return part of the skill shot. Ganking therefore should be pretty straightforward for landing your spells, especially if your teammates decide to actually use their CC and help you out. But once you are level 6, you are now far more effective due to the immense increase in burst damage and the ability to escape or chase with the ultimate stealth and movement speed benefits. Your ultimate can allow you to get in, delete your enemy without much risk, and get out. However, without his ultimate, he can be pretty vulnerable if there's a lot of CC, if there's a poppy, if there's something that can chain you against a wall and prevent you from Eing out to run away. It does take a few games to sort of get into the rhythm of understanding the burst combos, knowing where and when you can use the E to unique angles, and basically opening up your map awareness to new levels. But overall, it's much easier to pick up than, say, the Kiana. And from his farming ability, from his ganking reads, really this champion was born to 1v9 in the jungle. So when it comes to your skill order, runes, and itemization, where you're going to want to start with that W level 1, and then Q, and then E obviously, and then you're going to max them in the exact same order. Now despite Talon historically being a burst assassin, and don't get me wrong, he still is, you're going to opt for Conqueror because all assassins run Conqueror. I gave a hint to this tilting reality in the Kiana section, but it helps you out for longer fights, it gives you damage, it gives you healing, you can of course rush tanky itemization, and now when you don't have that ultimate, or even when you do, you can become very slippery and difficult to kill as you go for Triumph, Tenacity, and Last Stand to increase that a little bit more. When Palpatine said things were unnatural, this was what he was talking about. And then you wrap it up with some booties and Cosmic Insight. Now for itemization, it does get a little bit more interesting in that it doesn't. People have been finding real success with Gore Drinker as it just gives them a touch more survivability rather than going down the full glass cannon route. You should have more than enough damage to assassinate everyone. Just remember when you're diving teams and bursting them and using your ultimate, when you get focused, which you will, don't forget to press that active because that is the OP part, and then you can escape with your E. Just like Jungle Kiana, we're gonna want to go Ionian Boots of Lucidity because you benefit from haste. Everyone benefits from haste. Yuma's Ghostblade is a great rush item before you go into the Gore Drinker. Follow that up with a Black Cleaver, which is very strong with Gore Drinker combined, more so than if you're just buying it by itself. Damage, haste, HP, what more could you want? Cerilda's Grudge and Edge of Night work for the exact same reasons as they work on any assassin as well as Kiana, but overall you are simply going to have a lot more AP and just be a lot more sturdier than the Kiana, as well as having a bit more mobility. And as before, don't forget your Guardian Angel to come back to life, your Serpent's Fang versus Shields, and your Campang Chainsword. How many times can you say that fast in a row against heavy healing comps? And last but not forgotten, we have the Master of Shadows. Zed has been a champion that everyone loves to play and hates to face. and it's honestly refreshing to see him in the jungle, although not if you're probably a side lane player. I mean, if you lose mid lane, you just roam into the side lanes, we might as well put him in the jungle, get better CSPM without having to face a bad matchup, and then do the same thing. His abilities are pretty fun to play around with, especially when you've got a few buffs under your belt, and once you're level 6, you can gank and turret dive like an absolute monster. Not quite like a Yone, but that's a separate kind of monster, a demon really. But like Talon, with the buff to his damage to monsters, he can farm unholy quick. First clears and crabs are pretty much always on the menu. And then you pair that with the disturbing ability to dive into teams, delete certain targets, and then wave Sayonara as you go back to your shadow for free. This works incredibly well when you are snowballing hard in the jungle, as you simply walk into lanes, overkill everyone with your damage, and if things are looking a little bit weird for you, maybe you don't like the situation, just hop back to your shadow. And with the clear being so easy and fast as I mentioned, it's not quite your Karthus clear, but it is still very fast due to his passive chunking down camps once they have less than 50% HP, and he absolutely melts those buffs in camps like the Grumpulus. In early ganks as Zed, you're really going to rely on your W, especially pre-6. Despite not having any CC, because you pack a series punch with the damage, you have a slow and a gap closer. If you can land a QE and auto attack combo, you're pretty much looking at a very good successful ganking rhythm. Remember that Zed's pretty reliant on landing those Qs though to deal damage, especially in the early game, so try to time it around your teammates' CC and their slows, so you give your ganks the best chance of success. Once you are level 6 on Zed, you become that much stronger. When it comes to ganking, you can easily get into lane with your W over raptor walls, or basically any other wall. You can pop your R, don't forget that it follows flashes and dashes too, making your enemies tilt as they flash too late before they've realized what's happening. You have a real opportunity to abuse your ultimate when it comes to tower dives on Zed. You also have the option of popping your W behind you, moving in, ulting into the enemy, and then you can simply recast your W to escape the tower aggro and watch your enemies die, walking away as they explode like the flames from the original Iron Man movie. And diving enemy lanes when you have pushed laners is such a good way to tilt opponents, because a lot of junglers basically say, well, my lane is pushing, how do I gank it? Most junglers who don't have the kit and the nature to dive simply have to rely on counter ganks as well as lane ganks and baiting a little bit more. Zed really isn't limited by such mortal woes. Another fantastic thing about Zed in the jungle is that as long as you don't get put behind early game, you can easily 1v1 most junglers if you play it right. Get invaded, kill them. Want to invade, kill them again. As always though, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, please watch laner priority. Sometimes your team can rotate, sometimes their team can rotate, keep an eye on those minimaps. Because yes, even if the game state is in a negative situation for you and you are forced to farm a bit more, because you can do it so quickly, the enemy's ability to counter jungle you really isn't as prevalent as it would be if you were playing something else. The main thing really, and to reiterate this, is when you are playing Zed and dueling your enemies, landing those Qs is especially vital, especially in the early to mid game when you don't quite have the raw damage with your E and autos yet, and you will be punished if you miss them, let's not kid ourselves. We all know the memes about Zeds flashing in and missing everything and killing you, but they have reached a certain itemization point where they're just over damaging you anyway. Be patient, land those triple Qs, and watch as your enemies tilt into oblivion. For our skill order and runes, when you're jungling on Zed, you want to start Q, E, W, and then max those abilities again in the same order. While I've had a good time memeing Conqueror and Gore drinking in this video, for Zed we do want to run Electric Cube because that's the go-to for adding to already high burst damage, and then you can fill out the domination tree, finishing off with Ultimate Hunter. The more it's up, the more someone dies. After that, pick up Transcendence as well as Scorch from the sorcery tree to add to your damage and burst potential. Obviously there are some Gathering Storm enthusiasts as well. For itemization, we do have two core choices. The Duskblade of Drakthar, this will give you tons of damage as well as extra burst and invisibility, giving you resets, escaping from fights. The ability to reposition if you are in a bad position, which is something that happens to assassins. Alternatively, you can go for Eclipse, which will give you the chance to stick to your opponents with its movement speed and offer a slight bit of protection in the form of a shield. After your mythic itemization, the rest of the build is pretty similar to the other two junglers we've just spoken about. Ionian Boots of Lucidity, Yumu's Cleaver I said the first time, so I'm going to stick with it, but of course I mean Yumu's Ghostblade plus Black Cleaver. This gives you a lot of lethality, which we love, but also Black Cleaver allowing you to shred down any armor stackers who try to diminish your output. Cerulea's Grudge and Edge of Night make a return appearance as well. And if you were paying attention, you'd know that we're going to say Guardian's Angel, Serpent's Fang, and Campunk Chainsword. So there you have it, a breakdown of the brand new assassins in the jungle. Do not forget Kha'Zix is still the king though. However, these provide a whole different way of playing, faster clears, different skill levels and skill floors. Best of luck as you add these to your champion pool as we head to the end of Season 11. Make sure those climbs are fast, and these junglers will definitely help you do that. Thank you very much for watching. I've been your host Virkayu. Please do like, share, and comment if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to Mobalytics for all this high quality videos coming very soon. And as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.